There's something in the air, in those small details we often overlook, subtle signs that a woman leaves behind, either unintentionally or perhaps on purpose. Have you ever wondered how to tell if a woman hasn't been intimate for a while? There are signs, ways of behaving, small gestures that, if you learn to read them, reveal what she isn't saying out loud. This isn't a guessing game or a superficial read. It's about understanding, about knowing how to observe and grasp what's happening in her inner world. Today I'm going to share with you the 7 signs that may indicate a woman hasn't been with a man for a long time. These are signs that, if you can recognize, will help you not only figure out what she's feeling, but also understand how to approach her in a respectful and thoughtful way. This goes beyond the physical. It's about emotions, about the energy she gives off when desire is present but hasn't been fulfilled. My name is Celia, and if it's your first time on my channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. What you'll learn here will not only surprise you, but also give you the tools to improve your intimate and emotional life in a deep and authentic way. Let's begin. Number 1, the body's language doesn't lie. There's something fascinating about body language, especially when a woman is conveying more than she realizes. When a woman hasn't had intimate contact for a while, her body unconsciously begins to reveal that pent-up sexual energy. It's not always something she does on purpose, but the signs are there, waiting to be noticed. And when you know how to observe, when you pay attention, you can detect that unmasked sexual energy in small gestures. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, a friend of mine told me about a coworker who had started behaving differently around him. It wasn't something obvious, but there were certain details in how she moved when she was near him. He described how, in what seemed like a casual conversation, she would lean slightly closer to him, hold eye contact longer than usual, and play with her hair in a way he hadn't noticed before. It wasn't blatant flirting, but something subtler, yet constant. That energy, which had been contained, was starting to surface. What happens is that when a woman hasn't had intimate contact for a while, her body starts looking for ways to release that tension. She may not even be consciously thinking about it, but her body reflects it. Psychological studies have shown that unexpressed sexual energy can manifest in repetitive gestures like touching her hair, biting her lips, or maintaining prolonged but subtle physical contact with the person in front of her. These are gestures that can easily go unnoticed if you're not paying attention. But if you look closely, you'll understand what's happening. The body doesn't lie. Unlike words, which can hide or distort reality, body language is a direct window into what someone is feeling. And in the case of a woman who hasn't been intimate for some time, those small gestures, leaning towards you, seeking your proximity, or even casually and repeatedly touching you, are signals that her desire is looking for an outlet. Now, it's important not to jump to conclusions or misinterpret every gesture. You need to be observant, yes, but also wise in how you interpret what you see. Often, these small movements are her subtle way of opening up, of showing you that she might be interested in something more, but she wants to see if you pick up on the signals. So, when you're in conversation with a woman, pay attention to her body language. Does she hold your gaze longer than usual? Does she touch her hair or lips in an almost unconscious manner? Does she seem to seek your physical proximity, even when it's not necessary? These are signs that there's probably some built-up sexual energy that's seeking release. Remember, it's all in the details. Women who haven't been intimate for a while may not say it with words, but their bodies communicate in ways that, if you know how to read them, give you all the information you need. And when you become aware of these gestures, you can start responding more intuitively, more connected. Because what she's showing you, even in a subtle way, is that there's something deeper behind those words and that smile, something waiting to be discovered. Number 2, playful and provocative humor. There's something curious about how humor becomes a bridge to intimacy. When a woman has gone a while without being intimate, her mind might start to play with ideas, comments, and jokes that she might have previously let slip by. This humor, often with a provocative or double-edged twist, is her way of testing the waters, seeing if there's a reaction from you. And dear, she doesn't do it by accident. Picture this. You're in a group of friends, just another afternoon, and she drops a seemingly innocent comment. Something that, in another moment, might have been taken purely as a joke. But this time, there's something different. Maybe the comment has a more intimate undertone, perhaps something like, "It's been so long since anything exciting has happened in my life," said with a light laugh and a gaze that lingers just a bit longer than usual. This type of humor, laced with innuendo, is no coincidence. A few months ago, a friend of mine told me about his neighbor, someone he used to chat with in a friendly, casual way. Suddenly, she began making slightly bolder jokes. At first, he thought it was just part of the conversation, but over time, he realized there was something more behind those laughs. These seemingly innocent jokes were a form of covert flirting, a way of releasing a tension that had been building for some time. The psychology of humor is fascinating, especially when it comes to human relationships. Humor is a powerful tool for connecting with people, and when a woman uses double entendre, she's doing it to gauge the response of the person in front of her. She's not going to be overt, of course, because she knows there's a fine line between suggestion and discomfort. But that subtle provocation is her way of cracking open the door, waiting to see if you'll step through. It's not just about what she says, but how she says it. If you notice that, in a casual conversation, she starts bringing up intimate topics or makes bold remarks, it's very likely that she's sending signals. What's interesting is that she often disguises it as humor to protect herself. If she doesn't get the reaction she's hoping for, she can easily laugh it off and move on, as if nothing happened. But if you catch the tone and the conversation becomes a little more charged with that playful banter, then you'll know there's something deeper at play. I remember a friend of mine, Marta, who always said humor was her secret weapon. "If I make a joke about something intimate," she once confessed, "it's because I want to see if he's bold enough to play along." That's how many women test the waters, looking for a connection beyond the everyday chit-chat. So dear, when she starts joking about topics that never came up before, pay attention. Don't just focus on the laughter or the surface of the comment. That playful, provocative humor is an invitation to step into her emotional world, and in many cases, a clear sign that it's been a while since she's had intimate contact, and that her mind and her body are seeking a connection. Number 3, the need for physical affection. Physical contact is one of the clearest ways a woman expresses what words often can't. And when a woman has gone without intimacy for some time, her need for physical affection can subtly, yet significantly, increase. I'm not talking about obvious hugs or blatant caresses, but rather those small touches and closeness that attempt to communicate what she may not feel comfortable expressing directly. I clearly remember Laura, a colleague of an old friend. He told me how his interactions with her started to feel different. What used to be a casual greeting was now accompanied by a hug that lingered just a bit longer than usual, or a light touch on the arm during conversation. At first, he didn't think much of it, but over time, these gestures became more frequent. They weren't invasive, but they conveyed a certain need for proximity, a search for contact. Something was there, quietly asking for attention. These gestures might seem insignificant if you don't know how to read them, but when a woman hasn't experienced intimacy for a while, her body unconsciously seeks that affection in everyday interactions. It's as if she's trying to remember what it feels like to be close to someone. She's not openly asking for sex, but the desire for physical connection begins to manifest in small ways, through touches, hugs, or even the closeness she maintains when she's around you. Studies have shown that when humans lack physical contact, they develop a heightened need for tactile affection. It's natural, a bodily response to the absence of intimacy. What's interesting is that these gestures aren't always intentional. Many times, a woman isn't even aware that she's seeking that closeness. It just happens. Her body acts on instinct, searching for warmth and the proximity of another person. This is where you need to pay attention. Maybe it's a simple touch on your shoulder while you talk, or how, when saying goodbye, her hug lasts just a second longer than usual. Or perhaps, when sitting close, you notice her legs brushing slightly against yours in a casual but persistent way. These are signals that, if you understand, reveal that there's something more than just friendship or casual interaction. But remember, respect is key. This isn't the moment to misinterpret every touch as a direct invitation. On the contrary, it's about reading the situation carefully and responding with sensitivity. A woman who hasn't had intimate contact for some time may be seeking affection, but she also needs to feel safe and understood. So, the next time you notice that small brush of her hand on your arm, or that hug that lingers just a little longer, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is she seeking something more? Because dear, within those simple gestures, there might be an entire world waiting to be discovered. Number 4, the shift in conversation. When a woman hasn't had intimacy for a long time, the way she speaks can change in subtle but meaningful ways. Suddenly, what used to be light conversations about daily life stop becoming more personal, deeper, touching on topics she may have previously avoided or glossed over. This is when you need to sharpen your listening skills, because when a woman feels comfortable with you and is seeking something more, she can open up emotionally in a way that reflects that unmet need. I remember talking to my friend Isabel, who mentioned how, after months of not being with someone, her conversations with certain close friends started to take a different direction. I don't do it intentionally, she said, but I find myself talking about my past relationships or how I miss feeling connected to someone. That vulnerability creeping into the conversation, that desire to share something more intimate, is a clear sign that there's something within her waiting to surface. When a woman starts talking about her love life, or rather, the lack of it, it's not because it's just a casual topic. She might tell you how much she's changed since her last relationship, or even drop lines like, I can't even remember what it feels like to be with someone. She might say it with a smile, but behind those words, there's a deeper message. She's opening a window into her inner world, showing you that there's a void that has been there for a while, and maybe now, it's starting to weigh on her more. A study I once read on emotional communication pointed out that when people feel lonely or in need of intimate connection, they tend to share more about themselves as a way of seeking that missing emotional bond. And when a woman who hasn't been intimate for some time starts to dive into these topics, it's no coincidence. She's looking for that safe space where she can express herself, and if she trusts you enough to talk about it, it's a clear sign that something more might be possible. What's interesting is that these conversations often start innocently enough. Maybe you're talking about relationships in general, about what it means to truly connect with someone. But if you notice that she begins to share more personal details, like her feelings of loneliness or what she misses about being in a relationship, it's time to pay attention. This isn't just casual venting, it's her way of opening up, letting you see what she's really feeling. This is where you need to handle things with care. Listen closely without interrupting. Give her the space to express how she feels, because that's what she's seeking. Someone who truly listens. Often, what she needs most in that moment is to know that there's someone who understands her, someone who not only hears her words, but also picks up on the emotions behind them. So when the conversation turns more personal, more intimate, don't take it lightly. What she's telling you, though not directly, is that there's a desire, a need, that has gone unmet for a while. If you can read between the lines and respond with empathy, you'll see that her openness is an invitation to connect more deeply in every sense. If you're enjoying the video so far and feel like you're learning something new, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up to support this content. I recommend sticking around until the end, because the most revealing insights are yet to come. For those of you truly committed to understanding these signs and strengthening your relationships, I have a final reflection that will surprise you and could make a big difference. And tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Let's continue. Number 5, the silent jealousy. Jealousy can be a hard emotion to admit, but sometimes women express it so subtly that it's almost invisible. However, when a woman has been without intimacy for a long time, these small, quiet jealousies can start to show in unexpected ways. It won't be dramatic or scandalous, but you'll notice little reactions that give you clues about what's happening inside her. This kind of jealousy isn't just about ego. It reflects a deep desire that has been kept under wraps. Picture this. You're at a gathering with friends or co-workers, and you mention another woman in the conversation, maybe just a casual remark about a new friend or a colleague at work. Pay close attention to her response. If the woman you're close to falls silent for a moment longer than usual, subtly changes the subject, or throws in a light-hearted joke with an air of nonchalance, you might be witnessing a sign. It's not possessive jealousy, but more of an internal reaction saying, "I wish I were the one getting that attention." This brings to mind the story of Carolina, a friend from college who always seemed calm and laid back in our conversations. However, everything changed when I started seeing someone new. Carolina never openly expressed anything, but I began to notice small signs. Her responses became shorter when I mentioned my new girlfriend, or she would suddenly make subtle comments like, "Well, some people get lucky in love." It wasn't a direct confrontation, but a gentle, persistent reaction that, at the time, I didn't know how to interpret. These silent jealousies are a clear sign of hidden interest, and in many cases, they come from women who haven't had an intimate relationship for some time. That lack of physical and emotional closeness can cause them to, perhaps unconsciously, try to protect the connection they have with you, even if they don't say it outright. They don't need to declare it, but you'll feel it in their subtle mood shifts, or in how they react when other women come up in conversation. What's fascinating is that this jealousy often doesn't present itself as something negative. In fact, it can show up as a way for her to reclaim her place in your life, even with humor. She might make a sarcastic comment or ask in a playful tone, "Do you talk to her like this too?" But behind that laugh, there's a small hint of concern. This isn't because of a real conflict, but because the idea of your attention being elsewhere stirs something that's been quietly simmering, a desire to be the one at the center of your thoughts. Psychology has studied jealousy for years, and many studies have found that when jealousy is expressed subtly and without being destructive, it can be a way of showing interest and desire. It's a kind of internal alert that tells us the person we're focused on is important to us, and we'd like to keep that connection strong. So, the next time you're talking with a woman you're close to, pay attention to those small signs. It could be a pause in the conversation, a slight tension in her expression, or a comment that seems like a joke, but carries more beneath the surface. Those small silent jealousies are a way of saying, without words, "I want to be closer to you." And in many cases, they can be a signal that she's been without intimacy for a while, and is hoping you'll pick up on it. This is where you need to respond with subtlety and wisdom. There's no need for a grand gesture or direct confrontation. Sometimes the best response is simply to be present, to show her that the attention she's seeking is already hers, without the need for competition. Because what she truly wants isn't a confrontation, but a deeper connection with you. Number 6, the invitations to spend time alone. Sometimes the clearest signs that a woman wants to get closer to you aren't in her words, but in the opportunities she creates to be alone with you. I say this from personal experience. There's something about those shared moments of intimacy that allows us to relax, lower our defenses, and see if there's truly a deeper connection. A spark that goes beyond simple friendship. I remember a time in my life when, after being out of a relationship for a long while, I started noticing how I sought out moments to be alone with people who interested me. I didn't do it overtly, far from it, but instead of going out with a group or surrounding myself with friends, I'd suggest quieter plans like dinner or a movie at home. Because sometimes, what a woman desires, especially if she hasn't been intimate for a while, is to create those moments where closeness can naturally arise without feeling forced. There's a reason we prefer these more private settings. When a woman invites you to do something one-on-one, it's not just to chat or pass the time. What she's doing is creating a space where emotional and possibly physical intimacy can grow, free from interruptions or the distractions of others. And while it might seem like an innocent invitation on the surface, there's an underlying meaning waiting to be uncovered. The truth is, when I've been in those situations, I felt a mix of excitement and curiosity. On one hand, I wanted to see how the other person would act in a more intimate setting, without distractions. On the other hand, I was also testing the waters, seeing if there was mutual interest, if that time alone would allow us to explore a connection beyond the usual routine. Because after being without that kind of closeness for a while, the desire to be near someone, to have a deeper conversation, or to feel another person's presence becomes more apparent. What's interesting is that often, when we're alone with someone we're attracted to, spontaneous moments happen. Maybe it's a conversation that turns more personal than expected, or shared laughter that breaks the ice and opens the door to something more. It's not just about being physically close, but about creating that atmosphere where both people feel comfortable, where words flow more freely, and gazes linger a little longer than usual. If you ever find yourself in this situation, where a woman starts suggesting plans for just the two of you, pay attention. It's not just about spending time together, it's about seeing if there's an openness to something more intimate, and most importantly, observe how the dynamic changes when you're alone. Sometimes, just sharing a quiet space can reveal more than you imagine. It's in these moments that real connection happens. It's not about making grand gestures or seeking an immediate answer. Sometimes, simply being present in the silence, enjoying each other's company, says more than words ever could. So, if she invites you to spend time alone, understand that she's creating an opportunity, and if you know how to read between the lines, that invitation could be the start of something much deeper. Number 7, the flirting becomes constant. When flirting becomes constant, the tone shifts. It's as if suddenly every interaction between you carries a different charge, a more palpable energy, and that subtle game intensifies. This is something that can naturally start to happen when a woman has gone without intimacy for a while. It's no longer just an occasional smile or a quick glance. Now, every conversation, every comment seems wrapped in a slight provocation, in that continuous game that never quite ends. I speak from personal experience. Sometimes, when a woman reaches a stage where desire starts to build up, flirting becomes a kind of language she uses to gauge your response. It's not something she plans, it just happens. The jokes take on a different tone. The words begin to carry double meanings, and the eye contact lingers long enough for both of you to notice. There's more to your conversations than just casual chats. What's interesting about this kind of flirting is that it's neither aggressive nor forced. It's a dance, a push and pull, in which both participants engage without openly saying anything. If you pay attention, you'll notice her comments start to have a playful spark, and her tone of voice shifts slightly when things get more personal. Maybe she teases you with a joke that flirts with the line, or laughs a little harder when your remarks are a bit bolder. I remember a time in my life, after being without intimate connection for a while, when I found myself flirting more frequently with someone I was attracted to. It wasn't intentional, but I noticed how my comments became more direct, how that game of seduction became a constant part of our conversations. It was a type of flirting that never faded, always present, always in the air, as if we were waiting to see who would take the next step. Psychology of seduction teaches us that repeated flirting is a sign of interest, a way to test the waters without making a direct commitment. And when a woman has been without physical connection, that game of seduction may intensify because her desire is seeking an outlet, a connection. What's fascinating is that this kind of flirting can last weeks, even months, without either person making the move to cross the line. It's as if both of you enjoy the game, the tension that builds slowly over time. The key here is knowing how to respond. If she's constantly flirting with you, it's not just for fun. That ongoing game is a way to keep the spark alive, to signal that she's interested without needing to say it out loud. How can you tell if this flirting has a deeper intention? Watch if it happens only with you, if there's a consistent pattern in how she interacts when you're together. If the tone is always light, playful, and it feels like every conversation carries a bit more emotional weight than it should, then it's likely you're in the middle of a game she started. What you need to understand is that in this constant flirting game, it's not just about taking the first step. It's about knowing when to take it. If she's been without intimacy for a while, it's likely that this flirting is her way of exploring whether you're also willing to play. Patience is key here. It's not about rushing things, but enjoying the dynamic that's being created. So, when you find yourself in the middle of that endless game of jokes, double meanings, and knowing smiles, realize that there's something more at play. She's waiting to see if you pick up on the message, if you're willing to follow her lead. Because, in the end, this constant flirting is her way of telling you she's ready for something more. But she wants you to be the one to discover it. In the end, it all comes down to the ability to see what isn't always said in words. The signs a woman leaves when she's been without intimacy for a while aren't an impenetrable mystery, but rather glimpses of emotions, desires, and needs seeking to be understood. What we've explored today is much more than a guide to understanding her subtle language. It's an invitation to connect from a more authentic and respectful place. Because behind every gesture, every glance, there's a story waiting to be discovered, a desire to be seen, heard, and perhaps loved. In life, it's those small moments of attention and true understanding that transform our relationships. And when you learn to read these signs with empathy and care, you become someone who's not just looking to fulfill a superficial need, but someone who understands and values what the other person is truly communicating. My name is Celia, and I want this to be a place of wisdom and reflection, where we can openly discuss these topics, always with respect. Here, we explore not only intimacy, but how to improve our everyday lives in every aspect. Because every small change we make within ourselves is reflected in our relationships and the well-being of those around us. If this is your first time on my channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming topics. And if you've made it this far, I congratulate you, because it means you value your personal growth, and that deserves recognition. To know who among you is committed to this journey of self-discovery, comment the phrase, "I love wisdom," and tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to read your messages and know who's joining me on this path. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need it. Sometimes, a simple piece of advice or reflection can make a big difference in someone's life. I'll see you in the next video, and remember, what's most important isn't always what's said, but what's perceived.